Welcome back to Anchored Life with Kayla. Today I am sharing 3 top tips on having a successful marriage. I've been married for 6.5 years. It will be 7 this June. So I'm not a marriage expert, but I have learned some things along the way. And make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video because I have a super effective marriage exercise to share that Bruce and I do on a weekly basis, and you don't want to miss it. My first tip on how to have a successful marriage is communication, which is actually super important for any relationship. And this can be really hard when you don't have a lot of time to devote to communication, or maybe you don't have the same communication style as your partner does. My husband Bruce and I are reading The 5 Love Languages by Dr. Gary Chapman right now, and it has been really eye-opening on just how to best communicate with each other. He talks about one type of person being a Dead Sea type, where they just take all the information in and don't really say much back out. And the Babbling Brook type of person is more of a anything that comes into their head just comes immediately right out, and they talk. So I would say that my husband Bruce is more of a Dead Sea type. If you know him, you're like, yes, that is so true. And I would be more on the Babbling Brook side. Now, this kind of relationship can be really attractive when you're dating because the person who doesn't say much is thinking, wow, this is great. The other person is filling all the silence. And the person who talks a lot is like, great, I found a wonderful listener for me to just talk to. But then after a while, they kind of get sick of each other not saying enough or saying too much, and they're just like, okay, I need some quiet now. So it's important to know what kind of style you are and what kind of style your spouse is, so that you can learn to meet their needs and learn to communicate in a way that fits both of your styles. It was hard for me to understand how Bruce communicates, especially when we first started dating, because I'm not used to conversation where there's a lot of quiet space. I'm ready to just jump in and fill that space, but Bruce is sitting there and he's thinking about his answer before he gives it to me. And meanwhile, I'm thinking that he's not gonna answer or that he didn't hear me. But meanwhile, it's actually a pretty smart thing to think about what you say before you say it. That way you don't just blurt out every dumb thing that comes into your mind, which sometimes I do. Bruce and I, as we've been reading this book, we've been realizing that it's important to be intentional in our relationship. So I think it's super great that we're reading this book together because we're both intentionally taking the time to sit down, work on our communication, and work on improving our marriage. Which leads me to the second point, intentionality. Marriage takes hard work and intentionality. If you think that things are good, so let's just sit back and relax and let our marriage do its status quo thing, well, you're probably gonna start sliding into dangerous territory soon, because your marriage requires that you keep putting energy in, you keep putting effort in, and you're intentional about making it stronger. It's like the same thing with muscles. If you're not building them and making them stronger, you're not using them, they're gonna start breaking down and get weaker, and the same thing goes for your marriage. That's another difference between my husband and I, is that I'm kind of more of a nitpicking type person who's always seeing things that we need to improve on, while my husband's like, things are good, why are you worried about it? So I think it's probably good if we met in the middle and just intentionally worked on things while also just enjoying the process. When we got married, we decided that divorce wasn't an option. So if divorce is off the table and we don't want to live a miserable life in an awful marriage, well then we better put the work in to have a good marriage. And that amount of intentional work into your marriage, it's gonna look different for everybody because we are all completely unique individuals with different love languages, different experiences, different priorities. So each relationship is going to work that out practically in a different way, but at the base of it all, the important thing is that you are showing your spouse that you love them and that you are listening and you care about what they have to say. It is up to you to do the research to make sure that you are doing what your spouse individually needs to feel loved and secure. That's where point number 1 comes in. Communication. I've heard before that you need to see your spouse as the only one in the world for you, that there is absolutely no one else. It is just you and them. And that takes some very intentional thinking about your marriage and how you see your spouse. And it requires some discipline, but that all is part of the having a good marriage. It requires hard work, and that includes how you think about your marriage. My third tip on how to have a great marriage is to have fun. Marriage needs fun, otherwise you are just business partners getting tasks done. Find reasons to laugh together. Those activities that you did when you were dating and you don't do anymore, well, go do them. What about that activity that you both enjoy but don't have time for? Well, you need to be intentional, see point 2, about making time for it. You make time for what's important to you. So yes, cleaning the house is important, going to work is important, going to your parent-teacher conferences are important, but so is having fun with your spouse. That is also important. So it's needed to sometimes just make some space in your schedule and say, you know what, we are going to just clear a little way here, and we are going to make sure that we have time to have fun together, because that is so crucial for our long-term health of our marriage. Bruce and I first connected when we were skating with a large group of people. We were skating down on the river because yes, it gets very cold here. So we started dating and then we went skating again. So for us, skating on the river is like a special thing. So every year we try to make sure that we go skating on the river at least once. So it's like kind of like our thing, the thing that we did when we were dating and the thing that we're still doing now. There's totally this whole side story to the first time we started talking when we were skating, and this random man told everyone in our group that he saw us making out in the warming shack, which wasn't true. So there's that. What about that activity that you really enjoy doing and you wish your spouse would do it with you, but they're not really the biggest fan of? Maybe make a deal with them that if they join you for that activity, that you'll join them in one of their activities. And then do it without complaining. That is the important part. Don't ruin it with your complaining. So there's 3 of the things that I think make a great marriage: communication, intentionality, and having fun. What did I miss? Let me know down in the comments. What are your top 3 things for having a great marriage? And now, as promised, here's the exercise that Bruce and I do on a weekly basis to make sure that we are intentional about having great communication in our marriage. I got this exercise from Audrey and Jeremy Roloff. And so they kind of listed out a bunch of different questions that they go through on a weekly basis. And it just helps them to have kind of a structured catch-up session, as it were, every week. So I thought this was a really great idea, and we took it on early in our marriage, and we're still doing it to this day. Every Sunday, we ask each other the same 4 questions. And then on a monthly basis, you add on another question depending on what's important to you to talk about. So I did change the questions that Audrey and Jeremy had been talking about in their marriage to make it more something that was relevant to our marriage. So for us, the questions that we ask each other on a weekly basis are: what brought you joy this week? That is just anything that was good, just celebrating those wins and being able to remember those good things that happened that week with your spouse. The second thing is: what was hard for you this week? That is a great place to be able to just share the things that were difficult and be able to support your spouse and listen to them and just recognize what happened in their life and what was important to them. The third thing that we talk about is: what can I do for you this week? So maybe we just feel like we need a few more hugs that week, or maybe we're like, you know what, you could do that project you've been meaning to do around the house. Whatever it is, take a moment to share what you would really like your spouse to do for you that week, and then actually do the thing that they want you to do. Hopefully it's a reasonable request. The fourth question that we ask is: what has God been teaching you this week? This adds in a really important spiritual aspect to our marriage, because we are both Christians. We both have faith as being a really important part of our lives. So for us, being able to talk about our spiritual growth that week, it helps draw us together in a different kind of way. And then monthly-ish, we add in other questions like: how are we doing with our finances? How are we doing with our intimacy? Where do you see yourself in 5, 10, 15, whatever years? Just talking about our goals for the future. Bruce added in another one recently, what makes you feel loved? What made you feel loved this week? Which is a really sweet question to really get to the root of what you can do for your spouse to make sure that they feel loved and appreciated. So I think that was very sweet of him. Like I said, these questions can be and should be customized to match your marriage and to fit your needs. I will write them down below in the description box so that you have them written out so that you can kind of tweak them as need be for you. I hope I've given you some things to think about to make your marriage better. If you liked this video, please hit like and subscribe to my channel. I release new helpful videos each week. And share with a friend if you think that it could be helpful to them too. We'll see you soon.